food grains procured from them, as well as the quantity of food grains procured from farmers, it does suggest very strongly that we are well on the way to helping farmers substantially improve their income. Those statistics are given in Madam's speech document as well. As far as the $5 trillion economy size is concerned, if you look at the fact that in the year ending 21-22 as well as in the next financial year, we are the fastest growing economy among large economies, and our GDP in dollar terms has already crossed $3 trillion. So depending on how the exchange rate moves, and there is enough hope to believe that the Indian rupee will in fact remain stable to strong given what is going on in the developed world. And if we continue to retain the path of 8% real GDP growth, it will translate into even 8% dollar GDP growth. So therefore, if we extrapolate it, in the financial year 25-26 or by 26-27, with some luck even by 25-26 itself, we should be at a $5 trillion size in terms of nominal GDP. Thank you.
मैं उसमें जोड़ना चाहती हूँ. Sorry, I didn't get your name. ज्ञानेश्वर जी, एक आध विषय में जोड़ना चाहती हूँ उसमें. I'll just list out the things, you'll understand where I'm coming from. MSP, यूरिया, माइक्रोन्यूट्रिएंट्स, मैं एक सिर्फ यूरिया सब्सिडी का नंबर बोलती हूँ. बजट 21-22, मतलब 1 फरवरी 21 में जो बजट दिया गया उसमें 58,768 was the allocation for urea subsidy. This time it is 63,222 आने वाले साल के लिए. ठीक है. और एक्चुअली 58,768 जो बीई में बोला गया यूरिया सब्सिडी, वो आरई में 75,930. इसका मतलब है कि इंटरनेशनल यूरिया प्राइसेस जितने भी इंक्रीज नहीं हुए, इट्स ऑल राइट, इट गॉट इंक्रीज्ड, मगर वो बोझ किसान के ऊपर पड़ने नहीं दिया. प्रधानमंत्री जी ने उसको तुरंत इंटरवीन करके that burden we took, we didn't put it on the farmer. So MSP, urea, nutrient in terms of micronutrients which we are giving for farmers, 6,000 rupees Pradhan Mantri Kisan Samman Nidhi, additional income कमाने के लिए किसान के लिए शहद का कल्टीवेशन, हनी, बी कीपिंग का प्रावधान, उसको समर्थन और उसका एक्सपोर्ट बढ़ाने के लिए ऑल काइंड्स ऑफ मार्केट लिंकेजेस थ्रू ई कॉमर्स. फिर सोलर पंप्स, उनके वाटर पंपिंग के लिए किसान के लिए सोलर पैनल वगैरह दिया गया है जिससे उनका ऊर्जा का एक्सपेंस कम होगा. फिर मैंने शायद जुलाई 19 के बजट में या 20 के बजट में ये बात बोली, अन्नदाता क्यों ऊर्जा दाता नहीं बन पाएंगे? जरूर बन पाएंगे. वी मेक श्योर दैट एवरी किसान विल प्रोड्यूस बिजली यूजिंग सोलर पैनल्स इन हिज फील्ड, and he can also uplink that and earn money from the government for supplying urja. Finally, in this budget, I've also made an announcement for food processing, which is at the farm gate, so that investments can happen there. पोस्ट हार्वेस्ट ग्रेन्स को तुरंत प्रोसेसिंग में वो किसान देने के कारण उनका इनकम बेटर रेट्स मिलता है उनको. सो देयर आर सेवरल स्टेप्स दैट वी आर टेकिंग फॉर इंप्रूविंग फार्मर्स इनकम. आई वांट यू टू प्लीज टेक कॉग्निसेंस ऑफ इट. हाँ,
इसके अलावा एग्रीकल्चर क्रेडिट
वो भी इम्पोर्टेंट
है. इस साल टारगेट 16.5 लाख करोड़ का था, जो अभी तक 75% हो गया है. अगर आप देखेंगे आज से 16-17 में वो 10,65,000 करोड़ था, तो ये बढ़कर अब 16,50,000 करोड़ इस साल होगा. अगले साल हमारा लक्ष्य है इसको 18 लाख करोड़ तक पहुंचाने के लिए. तो एग्रीकल्चर क्रेडिट में भी काफ़ी बढ़ोतरी हुई.
Okay, 125.
Ma'am, Timsi Jaipuria this side from CNBC TV 18.
Your tax revenue collection targets are conservative, but your borrowing numbers are all-time high. How do you explain that? And secondly, when it comes to public sector expenditure, the capex expenditure for RE 2022, they have been revised downwards. How do you explain growth along with these downward revisions?
First, on the, you're saying that the capital expenditure targets for the RE have been moved downwards. From how much to how much, according to you?
There that you've made in the public sector expenditure, but
No, not in the capital expenditure budget estimate was 5,54,000 crores. The revised estimate, after removing the actual revised estimate is 6,03,000 crores. But even if you exclude 52,000 crores, which is an Air India sundry dues repayment, it is 551. So the RE is 551 against a budget estimate of 554. That is statistically insignificant. So basically the capital expenditure targets are expected to be achieved.
I think this question was also asked by your colleague Sapna here, that the revenues are conservative. So if we look at revenues and compare it with the GDP figures, I would also like you to concentrate on the fact that the excise duty is not linked to that. Excise duty is a specific duty, so that doesn't go up as the prices would go up. One, and secondly, if you recall, we have reduced the excise duty on diesel and petrol by 10 rupees and 5 rupees per litre. So if we take away the excise duty numbers both from the RE of the current year and the BE of the next year, then the growth in the revenues is more than 14%, which I think is not conservative, but is a very pragmatic number, and we would make all attempts to achieve that.
Number 70, number 70, number 70.
No, the borrowing number is nothing but the fiscal deficit minus the expected small savings collections and the other sources. So they tally. I mean, it is 16,61,000 is the total fiscal deficit. 11,80,000 or something is the net borrowing requirement. The difference is small savings and certain other sundry receipts. I don't see any, there is no artificial, that's a very realistic number. It's based on our best estimate of what will be collected in small savings, and net of that is the borrowing requirement.
Ujjwal Narayan from Newsrise. Ma'am, in last year budget, you have announced about sale of privatization of 2 state-run banks. But this year, there is nothing that sort has been confirmed in the budget. Just wanted to know what is the situation. Does government is going with the stated policy which it stated in last year budget, and that for the privatization of 2 state-run banks? And what is the holistic policy on the privatization of bank and insurance company as a whole?
You've answered the question yourself. What is the holistic policy? Holistic policy is a continuation of last year's budget. I've said that. This budget in every aspect is a continuation of last budget, inclusive of the privatization matter that you're talking about. That's what I'm telling you. We are continuing that agenda. All right?
Number 68.
Status budget. Sorry? Yeah, I said Air India also, and I have done the Air India, haven't I? Huh? That's right. When we have something, you will get to know. No? I'm not doubting it. Huh? That's right. Thanks for reminding me.
Number 68.
Hold on.
क्या इसमें क्रिप्टो शामिल है?
क्या चीज?
डिजिटल एसेट क्या है? क्या इसमें क्रिप्टो, जिसको करेंसी भी कहा जाता है, क्रिप्टो करेंसी,
तो जिसके लिए घोषणा की गई है आज बजट में,
घोषणा की गई है कि सेंट्रल बैंक एक डिजिटल करेंसी इश्यू करेगी, बस। उसके अलावा हम चर्चा में क्रिप्टो क्या है, क्रिप्टो एसेट क्या है, अभी नहीं होगा। वो जीरो ड्राफ्ट जो है, जिसके ऊपर स्टेक होल्डर्स कंसल्टेशन चल रही है, आप भी उसमें शामिल हो जाइए।
नहीं मैम, मैं ये जानना चाहता हूँ कि डिजिटल एसेट क्या है बेसिकली।
ठीक है, वही है वो प्रश्न, और डिजिटल एसेट्स का डिस्क्रिप्शन, ये सब उस स्टेक होल्डर कंसल्टेशन के बाद है, उस समय बात करेंगे उसके ऊपर, ठीक है।
1 to 1.
जनता के सवाल है। एक तो लोग महंगाई से बहुत त्रस्त हैं, आपने जवाब दिया गोलमोल, लोगों को समझ में नहीं आया।
सॉरी,
जो महंगाई पे सवाल पूछा गया था, शायद प्रभु जी ने पूछा था,
हाँ जी,
कि देश में इतनी महंगाई है, उसका आपने बहुत ही डिफिकल्ट आंसर दिया। शायद आम आदमी को समझ में नहीं आएगा। मेरे पास किसी का प्रश्न आया कि समझ में नहीं आया मैडम ने महंगाई पे क्या बोला। दूसरा मेरा प्रश्न मैडम बेरोजगारी के ऊपर है। आपने कहा लाखों रोजगार सृजित होंगे, सरकार का वादा था 2 करोड़ रोजगार देंगे, 2 करोड़ और घट गए बजाय रोजगार देने के, और बेरोजगारी ज्यादा हो गई। और जो एक छोटा सा मैडम आपका एक इशू था, शुरू से चला आ रहा है पार्टी का, कि ब्लैक मनी वापस लाएंगे। कोई ऐसा डेटा है कितना ब्लैक मनी वापस आया आज तक?
इन्फ्लेशन के बारे में जो मैंने जवाब दिया, वो जवाब मैं दोहराऊंगी, मगर वो अगर आपको गोलमोल लग रही है, मैं किसी और से जवाब दूंगी, क्योंकि मेरा बोलने का तरीका शायद आपको हिंदी में और इंग्लिश में दिक्कत है। I'll ask somebody else to answer it. There is no गोलमोल सर। बजट जब प्लान करते हैं और एसेंशियल सर्विसेज का एक कमिटी जो है मंत्रीगण का, ये बार बार हम बैठते हैं, बात करते हैं। हाँ, जब इंक्रीज होता है प्राइस एसेंशियल कमोडिटीज का, मैं मानती हूं आम आदमी के ऊपर उसका दिक्कत जरूर पड़ेगा, उसको मैं नकार नहीं रही हूं। मगर ऑयल सीड्स, ऑयल, एडिबल ऑयल का प्रॉब्लम जब हुआ, तुरंत हमने ड्यूटी कम करते हुए पाम ऑयल का इंपोर्ट बढ़ाने के लिए एक बार नहीं 2 बार कोशिश की, और पाम ऑयल का इंपोर्ट, क्रूड पाम ऑयल का इंपोर्ट और रिफाइंड भी ज्यादा आ रही है, जिसका असर आजकल एडिबल ऑयल में जरूर पड़ रही है और मार्केट में खबर भी है। इन्फ्लेशन दूसरा एक और विषय, एडिबल पेरिशेबल कमोडिटीज के ऊपर जब होता है, उसको भी इंपोर्ट के द्वारा तुरंत हेल्प करने के लिए हम स्टेप्स उठाते हैं। फिर ऑयल सीड्स भारत देश में भी कल्टीवेट हो, उसका उत्पादन ज्यादा होने के कारण हम आत्मनिर्भर हो एडिबल ऑयल में, उसका भी इस बजट में एक अनाउंसमेंट हुआ है। ऐसे करके बहुत सारे कदम हम उठा रहे हैं। एक और विषय, सिंपल टेक्निकल बात में जिक्र करना चाहती हूं। हाँ, जरूर जनता के ऊपर प्राइसेस के वजह से जब ट्रबल होता है, उसमें एक्शन लेने का जिम्मेदारी सरकार के ऊपर है, और हम बार बार उसके ऊपर कदम उठाते आ रहे हैं। मगर टेक्निकली 6% से ज्यादा कभी ब्रीच ही नहीं, छोटा इधर उधर एक महीना हुआ होगा 6% ब्रीच करने का इन्फ्लेशन का विषय में। मैं याद दिलाना चाहती हूं, इस सरकार 2014 से लेकर आज तक we have not allowed it to go to double digits। जो याद होगा आपको, उससे पहले 2014 से पहले it was always in the range of 10, 11, 12, 13, even food products। इसलिए इन्फ्लेशन के ऊपर इस सरकार की ध्यान कभी भी ज्यादा है, और एक्शंस भी तुरंत हम लेते हैं। अगर ये भी आपको गोलमोल लगता है, मैं किसी और से भी जवाब देने के लिए बोलूंगी। ठीक है, बोलिए, चूज करिए किसी के। एम्प्लॉयमेंट के बारे में मैं जरूर बोलूंगी, बहुत सारे। मैं भाई साहब, पैंडेमिक के वजह से पूरे दुनिया में बहुत उथल पुथल हुआ, जॉब्स में नुकसान हुआ बहुत देशों में, हमारे यहां भी। मगर हमने आत्मनिर्भर भारत के दौरान बहुत सारे ऐसे अनाउंसमेंट किया जिसमें बहुत लोगों के जॉब्स इंटैक्ट रही। हाँ, जिनको नुकसान हुआ उनको अभी हम धीरे धीरे बहुत स्कीम्स के द्वारा हेल्प करके आ रहे हैं। ये नहीं नकार, आई एम नॉट डिनाइंग दैट देयर हैज बीन इम्पैक्ट ऑन जॉब्स, मगर एकदम कुछ नहीं किया वो सही भी नहीं है। कल का इकोनॉमिक सर्वे में अनंत नागेश्वरन जी और हमारे प्रिंसिपल इकोनॉमिक एडवाइजर, आई थिंक इज हियर, संजीव सन्याल, इतना विस्तृत रूप में जॉब्स के लिए क्या क्या पिछले साल में हुआ वो डिटेल दिए हैं। मैं संजीव से बोलूंगी आपको जरा इंफॉर्मेशन शेयर करने के लिए। हाँ, सो इट विल हेल्प यू टू नो। थैंक यू।
Number 260.
Somanathan wants to.
Yes, just specifically on job. Yeah, but specifically on jobs and specifically what is in the budget. So one is there is an additional 2 lakh crores of lending to MSMEs which is outside the ECLGS. So ECLGS is for those affected. It's an automatic program for existing borrowers. This is for new lending to MSMEs unconnected with ECLGS. 2 lakh crore of additional provision has been made in this budget. ECLGS has, as already mentioned, been expanded for the hospitality and related sectors. The outlay on Pradhan Mantri Gram Sadak Yojana is up by 27%. And in addition to that, a provision is being made that in the capital expenditure support to state governments, if state governments have certain priority projects in PM Gram Sadak Yojana have been identified, we will even take the 40% state share on those components so that the states have no burden in carrying out these works. These are extremely labor intensive projects, and in addition, of course, there is a huge increase in capital expenditure. It has a very high employment effect. We have a new scheme for the Northeast, which is abbreviated as PM Divine, which is the PM's development initiative for the Northeast. This is a gap-filling scheme where if something doesn't fit in any existing scheme, Northeastern states can post those projects to this fund, and this fund will give 100% funding for those projects.
And they're livelihood-driven projects.
In addition, we have the production-linked incentive schemes where we expect 60 lakh jobs to be created. Most of them are getting rolled out now one by one. So there are a number of initiatives in this budget, quite apart from what has been done earlier.
हम बार बार देते आ रहे हैं। एक्चुअली शेयरिंग ऑफ इंफॉर्मेशन विदेश से, स्विट्जरलैंड से 2018 के बाद में से शेयरिंग हो रही है। विदेश में जो अकाउंट्स है उनमें कितना पैसा पड़ा हुआ है उनको वापस ले आने के लिए। सो वो शेयरिंग के मुताबिक जो इंफॉर्मेशन आते हैं उसके ऊपर वी आर वर्किंग एवरी अकाउंट बाय अकाउंट फॉर ब्लैक मनी टू बी ब्रॉट। एंड अनदर थिंग, टुडे द NPAs in the banks are coming down. Banks are getting the money back of those who have fled the country. Having taken the money of the banks and having gone out, वो पैसा जब वापस आ रही है वो भी in a way partly black money ही होता है जी, जिसका टैक्स नहीं भरा, बैंक को पैसा चीट करके चले गए। मैं ये नहीं कह रहा हूँ पूरे के पूरे वो ब्लैक है, उसमें भी ब्लैक मनी है।
260.
मैम आनंद हूँ इंडिया टीवी से। हाँ मैम, आपके लिए उधर से बहुत वैसे सवाल आ रहे थे। अपोजिशन ने ये कहा है कि जो आपका जो आज बजट है वो डायरेक्शनलेस है और इसमें सिर्फ भविष्य की बात की गई है, तात्कालिक राहत के लिए कुछ नहीं है। और राहुल गांधी ने तो इसे कह दिया जीरो सम बजट कहा है। उन्होंने कहा है कि इसमें सैलरीड क्लास के लिए, मिडिल क्लास, गरीब, युवा, किसान, MSME के लिए कुछ भी नहीं है। तो सवाल ये है कि क्या विपक्ष को और खासतौर राहुल गांधी को आपका ये बजट समझ में नहीं आया या फिर उन्होंने राजनीति के चलते ऐसा कह रहे हैं?
आप दीजिए, मैं भी दूंगी। अरे आनंद प्रश्न पूछे और मैं जवाब नहीं देते, ऐसे थोड़ी ना होती। आई विल गिव आंसर, डोंट वरी।
जो बाद में आपने कहा कि राहुल गांधी को शायद समझ में नहीं आया होगा, यही बात सही है, क्योंकि इस बजट में सारी चीज़ों की सारी व्यवस्था की गई है। अभी मैडम सारी चीज़ का आंसर दे भी रही हैं। हर सेक्टर के लिए दूरगामी बजट है ये, निश्चित तौर से इससे देश को और भविष्य में फायदा हो।
I think he's given that typical UP type of an answer, which is good enough for a MP who ran away from UP. Yeah, no, that's not right. I wish as a leader of the oldest political party, Shri Rahul Gandhi, please understand what has been said in the budget. On every one of the category that is named, youth, farmer, I have mentioned repeatedly what benefits them. I pity people who come up with quick responses. Quick, understanding response, I'm ready to answer. But just because you want to put something in Twitter, it doesn't help. जो फ्रजाइल इकोनॉमी वो छोड़ कर गए, उसको पिछले 5 साल में और अभी 2-3 साल में इतना इकोनॉमी पैंडेमिक के वजह भी आज उबर कर ऊपर आ रहे स्टिमुलस देने के बाद, हर वर्ग का कुछ ना कुछ देने के बाद, बिना सोचे समझे ऐसे कमेंट्स करना. I only pity a party which has a leader who just comments without thinking. जितने भी कमेंट्स हमारे ऊपर वो डाल रहे हैं, कम से कम जिन राज्यों में शायद 2 बचा है जहां उनके सरकार है, जाके वो करके दिखाने के लिए उनसे बोलिए. क्या पंजाब में एम्प्लॉयमेंट ठीक है? क्या महाराष्ट्र में किसान ठीक है? आज भी महाराष्ट्र में कॉटन फार्मर्स के बीच में आत्महत्या हो रही है, उसको रोक रहे हैं राहुल गांधी. इसीलिए हर विषय बोलने से पहले वो महाराष्ट्र और पंजाब में कर दिखाएं फिर बात करें, छत्तीसगढ़ में कर दिखाएं फिर बात करें. Almost irresponsible comments are coming as criticism. I'll take criticism, but not from somebody who has not done his homework. Thank you.
266.
मैं अखिलेश शर्मा एनडीटीवी से. इनकम टैक्स रेजिम को लेकर के सवाल था. आपने बजट में घोषणा की थी न्यू टैक्स रेजिम की, और जो आंकड़े अभी तक आए हैं, कोई बहुत ज्यादा लोगों ने उत्साह उस नए रेजिम के लिए नहीं दिखाया. और दूसरा प्रश्न ये है, जो आपने खुद जिक्र किया कि पिछले 2 साल में पूरी दुनिया में उथल पुथल हुई है, कई जगह पर रोजगार की कमी हुई, भारत में भी उसका असर पड़ा है. तो जो मिडिल क्लास है वो एक राहत की उम्मीद कर रही थी, कुछ राहत मिले इनकम टैक्स स्लैब्स के अंदर. हालांकि आपने कहा कि देखिए पिछले 2 साल से टैक्स नहीं बढ़ाया गया, तो क्या इसी को राहत माना जाए कि टैक्स नहीं बढ़ा है?
नहीं, मैं सिनिकली जवाब नहीं दूंगी उसको. सिनिकली अगर देना है तो मैं बोलूंगी हाँ टैक्स बढ़ा नहीं है इसीलिए राहत है. नहीं, आई एम नॉट सेइंग दैट. देयर आर टाइम्स व्हेन यू कैन गिव. There are times when it will have to wait a bit longer. So I'm sorry it didn't happen. But बहुत सारे जो मिडिल क्लास का हुआ, वो भी मिडिल क्लास के खाते पे डालिए ना. मिडिल क्लास अक्रॉस द बोर्ड. मैं बजट में जो उपयोग की लाइन वो आपको पढ़ना चाहती हूँ. इट्स नॉट वन पर्टिकुलर सेगमेंट. किसान में मिडिल क्लास नहीं है, एमएसएमई में मिडिल क्लास नहीं है, अफोर्डेबल होम्स में मिडिल क्लास नहीं है. उन सबको राहत दिलाया नहीं है. हम मिडिल क्लास मतलब क्या बोलते हैं? अफोर्डेबल होम्स जो देते हैं मिडिल क्लास को देते हैं. सीनियर सिटीजन्स में मिडिल क्लास नहीं है. आज स्टॉक मार्केट में रिटेल इन्वेस्टर के नाम पे जो जाते हैं, क्योंकि फिक्स्ड डिपॉजिट में रिटर्न्स इतना अच्छा नहीं है इसीलिए स्टॉक मार्केट में जा रहे हैं, वो मिडिल क्लास नहीं है. सो मिडिल क्लास के वर्णन हम मन में रखें प्रश्न पूछने से पहले.
Number 9.
हाँ, yes, we have been actually Tarun can say something more.
There are 2 regimes, one in the corporate sector and one for the one that came last year. So on the corporate also, when the tax rate was reduced from 30 to 22%, a choice was given to the corporates to move to the 22% regime while taking no exemptions. So we have figures for 1920 financial year, which is the assessment year of 2021. 65% of the income has actually shifted to the lower tax regime. So basically a large number of people are shifting, people who are finding that they don't need exemptions or their exemptions are over, they are moving into that. Let me also mention to you that we have analyzed data for corporates. The average tax rate being given by corporates is about 22 odd percentage in that year, as against 27, 28 which they were giving when the regime was of 30%. So they got a lot of relief there. And for corporates which are showing profits of more than 500 crores, this taxation rate is close to 20%. So the taxation rate relief which you are talking about in the corporate sector is already there. As far as individuals and HUFs and the others are concerned, where a second option was given in the last year, since the date was extended for filing the returns, we'll be able to analyze the returns this year and know how many people have shifted. But my own anticipation or own analysis says that people with a little higher income, say 15 lakhs, 20 lakhs and above, should have shifted to the new regime, provided they were not taking benefits like housing loan benefits or they were not taking benefits like LTC. But we'll get to know exactly what has happened after we analyze this, and based on what analysis actually comes, will give us a pathway of what action or what steps we need to take in the future.
Good afternoon, ma'am. Here downstairs. Sanjay Agarwal from PA News. Ma'am, today you just mentioned about the stock markets. So I was watching that when you announced about digital virtual currency. So that time the cryptocurrency, the stocks went up, and SBI, the largest banker in India, the stocks went down. And you'd get a very innovative budget, despite you've given on postal services are going to go to the rural and they're going to get a lot of savings money. So what's the reason? Why is this reaction?
Fell down, or it went up at the end of the day?
I think you have to ask the investors who are doing it, because I don't see any, I don't think we can answer for them as to why they think the digital currencies are not good for banks is a matter of speculation.
What is the question on? It went up. Okay. So I think we should have taxed it even more, it would have gone up even more.
Number 5. Good evening, ma'am. This is Chetan from Business Today TV, India Today Group. Ma'am, fiscal deficit is pegged at 6.40%. Ma'am, what are the calculations and assumptions based for that number, considering the fact that the geopolitical tensions are rapidly changing and the global macros are also changing rapidly, especially for the crude and other related commodities. So, what is the bet on that number, ma'am?
I'll ask Somanathan to give you details, but what do you think it should have been if it's not 6.4? Because you sounded very sure it's 6.4, but
it's a question, ma'am. Do you think what are the calculations behind and the assumptions behind that number, ma'am?
All right.
First of all, the assumption.
It is 0.1% increase in fiscal deficit this time, because why didn't we get that?
No, see, first let me answer him first. The calculations which underlie it are given in the budget at a glance document. So it is 6.4 based on our prediction of what the GDP will be and our estimates of revenue and expenditure. Now somebody said your estimates of revenue are conservative. I think the Revenue Secretary has clarified that they are actually quite realistic. We think they are realistic, but when in doubt, we have chosen to do what we think is definitely likely to happen, rather than repeat the practice of having estimates which are not perhaps considered credible. So we've been trying to keep our estimates realistic based on the factors that you mentioned, that yes, there could be an upside. I mean, maybe revenues can grow more than 14%, but there are all the headwinds that you refer to. There's a federal taper, there's a possible oil price risk, which could all affect the economy. So we think the numbers we have here are likely to be achieved. It's the best estimate of what could be achieved. So I would say this is a very realistic projection of 6.4 as the percentage, given what is likely to happen to GDP, what is likely to happen on the revenue side, and what we have provided on the expenditure side. So they are estimates that they are the best estimates we can produce with a high degree of credibility of being achieved. And you're, sorry.
I said you had projected 6.8, not 6.9.
Yeah. We are being transparent. It is likely to be 6.9. So we have not massaged it to 6.8.
107.
मैम मैं नितिन हूँ लोकमत से। हाँ, आपने अभी बोला कि महाराष्ट्र में किसान अभी भी आत्महत्या कर रहे हैं, तो क्या केंद्र सरकार ऐसा क्या काम कर रही है जिससे वो आत्महत्या रुक सके? दूसरा, आपने 80 लाख गरीबों के लिए मकान इस बजट में प्रावधान किया है, जबकि प्रधानमंत्री ने 2022 तक हर घर के हर सर पे पक्की छत का वादा किया था, तो ये कब तक पूरा होने वाला है?
So the targets for all of these programs have indeed been affected by the pandemic, like all targets in all countries. So barring the setback which occurred during the pandemic, the programs are on course, and if you exclude the delays and disruptions caused in the last 2 years by repeated waves of a pandemic which is not in government's control, broadly they are on course to achieve the housing targets.
किसानों के मामले में स्टेट्स का भी रोल है जी। जब मैं महाराष्ट्र की बात करती हूँ, महाराष्ट्र में सरकार जो कांग्रेस के विषय में बात हुआ, उस संदर्भ में मैं कही एग्रीकल्चर इज स्टेट आल्सो डस इट्स बिजनेस। सो वो मालूम है जी, वो मालूम है, मगर जब हमारे ऊपर ही निशाना साधा करते हैं, जब हम लिस्ट करती हूँ कि किसान के लिए हमने क्या 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 कदम उठाए, राज्य का रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी, उस विषय में, उस संदर्भ में मैं पूछना चाहती थी।
मैम मैं लक्ष्मण CNBC आवाज से, जो किसान की बात चली, तो एक छोटा सवाल ये है कि जो अन्य योजना जो शुरू की गई थी उसकी म्याद 31 मार्च को खत्म हो रही है, क्या सरकार बजट में, चूंकि इस पर कुछ कहा नहीं गया, तो क्या माना जाए 31 मार्च को खत्म हो जाएगी कि आगे बढ़ाने पर विचार होगा? और प्रोडक्शन लिंक्ड इंसेंटिव स्कीम सिर्फ सोलर पावर के लिए, सोलर पैनल के लिए हम लोगों ने इंक्रीज किया उसका आवंटन, जो कि काफी एम्प्लॉयमेंट देता, आपने कहा भी, तो क्या आने वाले दिनों में और किसी सेक्टर पर विचार होने की संभावना माना?
अभी ही शुरू हुआ है PLI और अच्छा रिस्पांस मिल रही है उसका। 14 सेक्टर्स का PLI है। अभी बढ़ाने के विषय में कुछ सोच नहीं है, मगर जो अनाउंस हुआ है वो तो फुली इंप्लीमेंट हो, उसके ऊपर ध्यान हम देंगे। अभी अनाउंस करने के लिए बजट में मैंने जो घोषणा की उतना ही है, उससे ज्यादा मैं अभी बोलने का कुछ विषय नहीं है।
61.
Ma'am, good evening. This is Santosh Thakur. Ma'am, how much you expect from 5G spectrum auctioning?
Even if I can speculate on it, this will be the day to do it. I won't be able to do it.
Number 42.
Madam FM, this is Shimi Chaudhary from Economic Times. I needed two clarity. One on the virtual currency tax provision, whether it is prospective or going to be applicable from the next financial year. And second clarity I needed on the part of the capping of the surcharge on the long-term capital gains payable on the capital asset at 15%. If you could elaborate a bit on that.
The answer to your first question is 1st April. And the second part was yeah, the surcharge we have brought in two provisions. One, the surcharge on companies is today 15%, but In some cases, in some contracts, there is a need for more than one company to come together to bid for that particular project as a consortium. So when they form a consortium, it is called association of persons. So the surcharge on them, depending on their income, goes up to 37%. So now that will also be capped at 15% as much as a company surcharge maximum is there. The second part today, the second part of your the surcharge is that the surcharge on listed shares on which STT is paid is today limited to 15%. On other capital gains also, we are now bringing it at par with this 15%, so it will be 15% for them. So this will be a big relief for the startup community.
53. Yeah, good evening, ma'am. Siddharth from Bloomberg. I just wanted to ask you a steep hike in capital expenditure and borrowing of 15 lakh crores. So are we safely assuming that private investment will not happen in the next financial year also?
Safely assuming?
Will not happen. Private investment will not happen in the next financial year.
No,
because it is the government which is pushing the trigger.
No, I've actually mentioned it in my speech, that private investment will have to pick up and it will come. I used some words, I didn't use exactly what I'm saying now, but I did recognize that private investment, for them to come forward, it is very clear that the public investment will have to be increased, and we've increased with an expectation that they will also come forward. I'm being reminded by the CA that for private investment to be crowded in.
Number 70. Ma'am, I'm Mukesh, I work for Newsrise. Just wanted to know about the size of the green bond, the currency it will be issued in, and who will be the users and how they'll use it.
See, first of all, the green bonds are part of the overall borrowings of the central government. These are not additional, these are within that limit. Number two, they will be in the coming days specific sectors or the projects wherein this money will be used. Third, the expectation is that there are a set of investors who would like to put in money for projects which are green, which leads to less carbon consumption. So for that class of investor, this is the future. So we have to build that market. In that attempt, the first step will be taken in the year 22-23.
So you don't have the size of the LV issued locally. It won't be global bond.
At this point of time, it is in the domestic market, and we are in a conversation with Reserve Bank of India and with the market participants, and the size, etc., will be determined in the coming weeks.
I just wanted to add, because I was watching some commentary, I just wanted to make it very clear. There is no connection between the size of our capital expenditure and the issuance or non-issuance of any green bond. So whatever the size of the green bond issue may be, this is the budget and this is the total amount of borrowing. It is part of this borrowing that may come as a green bond. It is not that the green bond is a requirement or a conditionality for this budget to be executed and for the capital expenditure to happen. I just wanted to clarify that. Yes, but it will be part of the total market borrowings which have been projected in this budget of 11,58,700. So it is not over and above that. And this 1158 is not dependent on the issuance of a green. They are two separate transactions which will happen, but they are within this limit. And there is no conditionality about if this green bond doesn't get issued, then the capital expenditure may not happen. No, there is no such linkage.
Just 1 minute, madam. On the Shimi's question on the taxation, I want to clarify, it is still taxable as of today. It is not that it will become taxable from 1st of April. So I just wanted to clarify that the message should not go that it is not taxable today and becomes taxable from 1st of April. It is taxable today, but a specific regime has been brought in by the FM, which will be applicable from 1st of April. So that is another question, so that we can answer when you come to my office. I'll explain to you in detail.
Number 26.
Just one clarification. There is a mention of effective capital expenditure of 10.68 lakh crore, and what I found out that it includes the expenditure
some of the expenditure towards NREGA also. So just want to understand the reason, and does that include the long-term loan given to states like 1 lakh crore? Yes, it includes the 1 lakh capital expenditure loan given to states, because that is for that is exclusively for capital expenditure. The assistance given to states is for capital expenditure alone in the form of a 50-year interest-free loan. And again, let me clarify, it was mentioned in the speech, but it perhaps has not been noticed in some quarters. It is in addition to the 4% of GDP normal borrowing ceiling which states will be allowed. So that 4% remains, 3.5 unconditional, 0.5 tied to power reforms. This 1 lakh crore is over and above that 4%. So it is additional capital expenditure money to the states. It is part of the 7.5 lakh crore which has been provided for capital expenditure. You had another point, I'm sorry. NREGA. So NREGA is classified in the government accounting system as grant in aid for capital expenditure, because it is expected that some assets are created, but it is because you seem to have some discomfort with that, and that is why we have footnoted it very transparently as to what amount of it is NREGA. So if you feel that NREGA is not a very productive expenditure, if that is your opinion, then we have allowed you to make your own calculations by giving those figures separately. So we have said provisions for also includes allocations under demand-related scheme, which would vary based on demand. So that has been indicated transparently. It is for you to draw your own conclusions.
110.
मैं आलोक प्रियदर्शी हूँ CNBC आवाज से। जो देश में मैन्युफैक्चरिंग सेक्टर है सबसे ज्यादा जॉब देता है, उम्मीद की जा रही थी कि मैन्युफैक्चरिंग सेक्टर की तरफ से कि बहुत सारे रॉ मटेरियल जो खासतौर से इंपोर्ट होते हैं उनकी इंपोर्ट ड्यूटी में कट होगी। एक दो चीजों में जैसे जेम्स एंड ज्वेलरी के लिए भी कट हुआ है और कुछ स्टील के स्क्रैप का आपने 1 साल और ड्यूटी कट को बढ़ाया है, लेकिन इसके अलावा भी बहुत सारे ऐसे आइटम्स हैं जैसे कॉपर, एल्युमिनियम जैसी चीजें थी जो कि इंपोर्ट होती हैं और सस्ती पड़ती हैं, उन पर इंपोर्ट ड्यूटी रॉ मटेरियल के तौर पर नहीं हुआ। तो क्या इससे मैन्युफैक्चरिंग सेक्टर की जो उम्मीदें थी कि एक्सपोर्ट्स को लेकर जो ग्लोबल कम्पिटिटिवनेस है वो उनकी खत्म होती जा रही है, उसको लेकर सरकार ने इस बजट में क्या विचार किया था?
मैं आइटम वाइज आपको जवाब नहीं दे रही हूं, मगर ब्रॉडली मैन्युफैक्चरिंग हैज टू बी सपोर्टेड, एंड फॉर दैट पिछले बजट से लेकर इस बजट तक जो आइटम हमारी इंटरमीडिएरी प्रोडक्ट्स और रॉ मटेरियल्स है हमारे देश में उसका जरूरत है, उसके ऊपर हमने कुछ भी टैक्स बढ़ाया नहीं, इंपोर्ट को अलग करते हुए। एक तरफा हम आत्मनिर्भर भारत बोल रहे हैं क्योंकि भारत में जिन जिन प्रोडक्ट्स का उत्पादन हो रही है वो इंपोर्ट के नाते अलग करना सही नहीं है, मगर जिसका उत्पादन इधर नहीं है मगर वो रॉ मटेरियल है क्योंकि डाउनस्ट्रीम इंडस्ट्रीज का वो आवश्यक है, फिर उसका इंपोर्ट अलग कर रहे हैं। वो ब्रॉड प्रिंसिपल है। उसी ब्रॉड प्रिंसिपल को हम आइटम वाइज देखने के बाद ही बजट में प्रावधान कर रहे हैं। इसीलिए आप इस बार जो मैं स्पीच में आइटम लिस्ट किया, सिर्फ उसको ध्यान में रखते हुए ये नहीं समझना कि सिर्फ उन आइटम्स को दे रहे हैं बाकी सबको नहीं दे रहे हैं। पिछले बार जो दिया गया वो कंटिन्यू होती है इस बार।
120.
Ma'am, I'm Nikunj Ori from Business Standard. Ma'am, there's been an allocation of 52,000 crore for Air India. Is this over and above what was sought in the supplementary demand for grants, which was 62,000 crore? And ma'am, there's been nominal GDP estimate has been 11.1. So could you please help us with what the inflation estimate is, because economic survey projects 8 to 8.5 as the real growth. And lastly, ma'am, pardon me for asking you a previous question. Last year, in the last year's budget, there was about 1 lakh crore which was expected from government's divestment in public shares in public sector banks and financial institutions. So that estimate has not been shared for this year as well as next year. So if you could please clarify.
We just had the discussion before coming here. Somnathan on the 11 nominal GDP and other things. I'll come back to this.
Okay. First, on your question of 52,000 crores, that was very much part of the supplementary estimates. In the supplementary estimates, there were two kinds of payments made to Air India. One kind related to the takeover of certain residual actual assets of Air India which have not been transferred. For example, their buildings, their land, they have some very valuable real estate and other assets. So those are part of the 62 something, they are not part of the 52. Those are actual capital assets which we retain. The remainder, which is actually capital in our accounting books because it is an infusion of funds into Air India but actually produces no value, is this element which has been separately quantified and transparently indicated to you. So the apparent capital expenditure in our numbers is 6.03, but we are telling you that 51 something of it is actually this. So it doesn't represent actual multiplier creating capital expenditure in the economy. So that's the clarification on that. Your second point was on 11%. See, we had a very difficult job of trying to estimate the nominal GDP. Remember, what the economic survey has given you is the real GDP growth, which they have estimated at 8 to 8.5%. The first difficulty we have is that the current year's GDP, which we have taken here from the Central Statistical Organization, which came on January the 7th, is essentially an estimate which is pre-Omicron in its construction. I mean, the inputs that went, because they are a statistical organization, they don't make guesses. They went with the trends they had on the date they made the estimation, and they did not have the Omicron trends with them. So it's possible that the base that we are working, we work on an incremental basis. We take this year's nominal, add a percentage for next year's nominal. So in adding to next year's nominal, first there is a slight discount we have made for this year's base. And then we have assumed that real growth would be somewhere in the range that the economists have given us. Could be a little lower also because of this base effect. And then we are taking the deflator. Remember, here it is not the CPI which we use for the construction of our GDP number. And even in the current year, we have a 17.6% nominal growth with a real growth in the range of 9%. Since there's a very high deflator this year, there is a possibility that next year's deflator will have a base effect which will make it lower. So taking all these factors into account, we have come to a number which is effectively, which comes to 258 lakh crores as the nominal GDP estimate. Your third point? I think that has, we do not have, I don't think we have ever said that out of 175, 1 lakh is for banks.
No, it was,
no, that was
it was an entry last time because a split was done. I think the split has been done away with because it really doesn't matter, where you bring this money from. I mean, money is fungible, so it comes from this or that.
Also, coming back to the question that came earlier from your neighbor on the, I think I have now understood better why she's saying what she said. So let me try to give you the answer. So if I'm understanding you correctly, but let me give you the last year's budget estimate for the fiscal deficit in absolute numbers was 15,06,000 crores. The projected budget estimate is now 16,61,000 crores. That is an increase of about 1.5 lakh crores in the amount of the fiscal deficit. If you look at the market borrowing estimates, they were 9,67,000 crores in last year's budget estimates. They have gone up by about 1.9 lakh crores in this year's budget estimates. So there is actually not much of an incongruity between the increase in the deficit and the increase in the market borrowing. What may be giving you this impression is that in this year's revised estimates, the market borrowings are lower than in the budget estimate because of an unexpected increase in small savings. So this year's small savings have been unexpectedly buoyant, perhaps because interest rates on deposits went down and these rates remained constant, but that could very easily reverse with the interest rate cycle reversing now. So we have remained, our small savings projections are based on last year's budget estimates, which were 391, they are now 425. So we have projected realistically what we expect as small savings in a normal growth without the unexpected increase that happened in the current year. So it's 1.9 growth in market borrowing against 1.5 lakh growth in the deficit. Very reasonable in my opinion.
Number 10.
Good evening, ma'am. Ma'am, Janani from Bloomberg Quint here. Ma'am, you had mentioned in the budget speech that the Special Economic Zone Act would be replaced by a new legislation. If I could ask, what would be the difference from the current SEZ Act and what is the intention behind the same, ma'am?
What is the?
The replacement for the SEZ Act, the legislation that will replace the SEZ Act, was mentioned in the budget speech today.
That's right.
If I could ask, ma'am, what would be different from the SEZ Act, that is, and what is the intention behind the same?
Well, you will have to wait for the department to work out on the SEZ Acts, and I've already mentioned broadly that it will help also for the states to be able to participate better in the SEZs. One of the broad objectives, but then the department is working on it and it will come through sooner.
With your permission, ma'am, can we close now because you have to go for another appointment? Thank you very much, friends. Thank you very much, ma'am.